always sort of produce a thought-provoking idea, and I find myself thinking off in different areas when I read them. Don is a graduate of Yale University, where he studied aesthetics, and most interestingly, I see, he says he's an instigator at Suppers to Go. So we can't wait to hear about that, especially since it involves food, evidently. Now, being a firm believer that the speaker is always more interesting than a long introduction, especially for me, I shall turn things over to Don so we may enjoy the maximum of time with him. So Don, the floor, the screens are all yours.
Thank you, Anne, for asking me to speak to this group, and thank you especially for persisting. It was at least a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, that you first asked me. So long memories have value.
Well, some are unforgettable.
Well, and thanks to the club for all the good work that you do in the community. It doesn't go unnoticed. And thank you to each of you for showing up and giving me reason to wear a shirt with a collar, probably for the first time in a year. So I didn't shave because I wouldn't have anyway, but so thank you for the opportunity to bend your ear for a little bit. I want to talk to you today about something really quite serious that has gone unnoticed, that I think imperils society in general, and that's the slow dissipation, evaporation even, of bar bets.
What?
If you're not familiar with what bar bets are, it's really the gentlest version of male aggression. It's two people arguing about something at a bar, each one insisting that they're right and looking for someone to settle the score. As I said, it's the safest form of male aggression. And if we don't keep that safe form of male aggression, then we're going to end up with many more unsafe versions of male aggression, which is why I think it merits the attention of a service club like yours. The problem with the reason that bar bets are imperiled is not because people don't go to bars. Pretty soon they will again. And it's not because people don't want to bet. It's because it's really difficult to find a question anymore that cannot be easily answered. So in 2014, for a year, as a favor to one of my favorite human beings, I worked for Rogue Ales as a creative consultant, and we got distracted by other things through the year that I was working with them. But what I really wanted to do was I wanted to build an app that would revive bar bets. And it turned out that we need questions that cannot be Googled, because those questions can now be answered too easily, but questions that still have a real answer. So, did Joe DiMaggio or Babe Ruth win more pennants? That's too easy. Was Joe DiMaggio or Babe Ruth more loved by their teammates? That's too difficult. There's probably not a single answer. So that's the dilemma that I want to bring to your attention today. We need questions that have real answers, that aren't easy to Google, and so that we can keep our men arguing safely. And that's what I was thinking about when I wrote the column that that if the creek don't rise, the Register Guard will publish this Friday. And I have the current draft in front of me, and I can read it to you. It's on this topic, sort of. Or I could summarize it to you, or I could skip it entirely and move on. What's
So
Ray?
Don, I think reading it would be just fine. That would be awesome. Thank you.
Raise hands if you're in agreement with Susan. Okay, it's not quite oh, now it is. It's unanimous. Okay. Here we go. You've probably always been considered one of the smarter ones in the room. Me too. I'm talking here to newspaper readers. Sorry, Facebook followers. We're the sorts of people that read a lot. We remember enough of what we read to bring what we've learned into conversations. We grew up in a world that rewarded memory, resourcefulness, and analytic skill. If you've never spent hours in the library combing through the Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature, you were born too late to understand our dilemma. Just Google it. We trained ourselves to be well-informed across a wide range of topics, or the imposing expert on a narrow set of problems. In either case, people paid us attention and respect if we could articulate the best answers. In the top-down model of informational power, we're known to pollsters as opinion leaders. For most of us, it's worked out pretty well. We got hired to do rewarding work. We influenced decisions made by others. We got into good schools. We attended interesting parties. We earned respect. We made something of ourselves in a world where ourselves was something that somehow required making. And if that doesn't sound absurd, maybe even dangerously absurd, this column is a warning for you. The world has shifted under our feet in ways that are as profound as they are unnoticed. The emerging world will no longer reward us for good answers. The supercomputers in our pockets have access to more memory and more expertise than any of us individually. We're in another John Henry moment. Machines outperform us. Siri or Alexa or Hey Google are waiting to answer any questions people may have. My point here is a hopeful one. Our place atop the informational hierarchy is only threatened if we refuse to adapt. We made the rules, we can change the rules. But we'll have to move quickly because changes are accelerating. Answers have become alarmingly easy to obtain, but they require something first from us. They need good questions. Certitude is less valuable now than curiosity. Memory is handy, but empathy is essential. Finding things out has never been easier, but only for those who know exactly what they don't know. Facts can be gathered and stored with inhuman efficiency, but a warehouse of data itself has no life. A questioning human still animates it. Only good questions can put all those answers to good use. I had a professor in grad school who warned us, whenever you cannot find any good answers, consider whether you might be asking a bad question. So what makes a good question? That depends on the context. If you're undertaking an experiment or building an argument, your question must taper the possibilities. but that's slightly misleading because most of us don't argue or experiment very much. Our questions usually occur in conversation. Any good answer will prompt more questions. And then there's no telling what might be revealed. You may even exit the inquiry more curious than when you began. That would be a worthy goal. If getting invited to interesting parties still matters to you, curiosity is how you'll make those parties more interesting because you're there. So I have plenty more to say, but I don't think that would be the best use of our time. Instead, what I'd like to propose is that we turn this format on its ear. And instead of a 25-minute presentation followed by 10 minutes of Q&A, let's do it the other way around. I'll stop talking. We'll have 10 minutes of my talking, and then we've got plenty of time for Q&A. And because we're inverting the model, I'm going to start with 3 questions that I wonder if you know the answer to. These are questions I just recently learned the answer to. Number 1, how do you give any dish more cilantro flavor without increasing the amount of cilantro? Number 2, which floor surface is coldest and why? Carpet, wood, or stone? And number 3 is more of a puzzle than a question. I give you a box of thumbtacks, a candle, 1 match, and an assignment. The assignment is attach the candle to the wall and light it so that none of the wax drops on the wall. If you know the answer to any of these, then you get to ask the first question. And your question, to be clear, can be about absolutely anything. Okay, I see 1 hand raised.
I would say the coldest is the stone.
And why?
Because it does not take the radiation that everything else does. It doesn't absorb it, so it's going to stay colder.
Okay.
I learned that lesson a long time ago when you accidentally sit down
Uh-huh.
on a curb or a sidewalk as a kid in the
Yep.
winter and feel like your butt's freezing to death.
Right. Tim is incorrect.
Oh, okay.
Are there any other answers to that one? Anne?
I would guess with cilantro or almost anything like that, if you crush it thoroughly, it's going to give you more flavor than if you just put it in the dish.
That is not the answer I was looking for. I'm not saying your answer isn't also correct, but it wasn't the one I was looking for.
Okay.
Keep going.
I would think that the cilantro would get more flavor if it was cooked.
That's not the answer I
Yes,
was looking
try.
for.
Okay.
Keep going. If you get bored with this, just holler and I'll tell you the answers. Go ahead, Susan.
Don, I would guess that if you added some liquid soap, that would give you a little bit more of a flavor of cilantro.
Well, look at as somebody who doesn't like cilantro, I would imagine. So the answer to the cilantro one is don't use the leaves, use the stems.
Oh,
The stems,
Okay.
Okay.
Anne was closest.
the stems have more flavor per square millimeter than the leaves do.
Oh,
Is that true with parsley?
It is true with parsley as well. Mhm.
Thank you, because I don't
Oh,
like
okay.
cilantro.
Yep. Yep.
All right.
And okay, so do you want to know why Tim was wrong about
Yes.
each of those 3
Yes.
was coldest? The truth is, all 3 of those surfaces, if you put a thermometer right there on the surface, they're all exactly the same temperature. So the reason that Tim, the reason that your butt felt cold when you sat on the curb, it wasn't because there was cold coming into your body. It was because there was heat leaving your body.
Okay.
And
What,
so
what about linoleum?
all of them are the same. This is one of those rare instances where it really actually is all about you. What you're feeling is not cold or warmth coming into you. You're feeling the cold, the heat of your body leaving you. And so, and anybody know the answer to my puzzle about the box of thumbtacks?
Repeat the question,
Okay.
Good idea.
please.
I give you a box of thumbtacks, a candle, one match, and an assignment. The assignment is that you have to attach the candle to the wall and then light the candle in such a way that the wax doesn't fall on the wall.
Wouldn't you have to put the candle in the box, empty out the thumbtacks and put the candle in the box and put the box on the wall?
That's
That's a
exactly
good one.
that's exactly right. You
Very
got
good.
Yeah,
I have that one too.
Takes a PhD.
I could have done that.
That's
you know,
funny.
and the trick there, is that you don't care about the thumbtacks so much as you care about the box. And so
And hope the candle is long enough so that it doesn't burn down into the box and burn the box.
true.
Good thought.
So okay, so is it Catherine on the corner? The happy bucks person?
I'm the happy bucks person.
Judith.
Judith.
Judith, you get to ask the first question of your own. Just any question that you want to ask.
Okay.
I'm
I'm
scared.
going to ask a question. I guess is how long will we have print newspapers in our world?
It's a really, really good question. And I'd rather answer the cilantro one again. I think all that whole world, which has been the one that I have inhabited my whole adult life, changed so quickly in so many different ways, all at once, that it's been nothing but chaos since. I think it is slowly dawning on people how dangerous our concept of democracy is without an informed public. I mean, we really are playing with fire on that. It's not a coincidence that Benjamin Franklin is considered one of our founding fathers. He never ran for office. He never fought in a war. He started newspapers and started the post office.
Mhm.
So we've always relied on people getting enough information to make our version of democracy work. So, and I think people are starting to grok that. You're starting to see a lot of like Substack and Patreon and other things that aren't so corporate heavy, that are just paying people who are going to meetings and paying attention to things, and and giving people the news that they're not getting as reliably as they were before. So we may be turning the corner. The bottom may be what we've already endured, and we might be figuring out a way to actually pay people for their expertise. Knock on wood. We'll see. I see another hand.
My question is, how much ridicule is the registered guard receiving because the new guard is crappy?
I can't really answer that because I don't have an office on Chad Drive. I never did. I'm not an employee of the newspaper. I have always just typed from
Freelance.
and sent it to my editor, and the editor does what he or she does with it, and then it shows up in the paper at your breakfast table on Friday morning. So I don't have any inside information about, how they're handling, the blowback.
Yeah.
Somebody just jump in.
Yeah, well, following up on Bob's question, and your comments about, democracy governing, etc. Not everybody can go to every city council meeting,
Correct.
and so how are we going to find out these things?
I don't pretend to know the answer to the question. It's a
Well,
difficult one.
there was I'll cite a good example. Eugene Weekly, I think it was last week, did a long piece about Glenwood and the concerns that people are starting to have in that area about what's happening. The Guard has not had anything like that.
My son lives in Glenwood. He's excited about that project.
For or again?
For.
Oh, well, the people in the Weekly were mostly again.
Well, of course. But I mean, getting opinions is easy. Getting facts is hard.
Well, I know.
Yeah.
And so where do you get your facts?
I spend a lot of time on the phone with people. I'm pretty fortunate for myself because there's kind of almost no one in town that wouldn't take my phone call. Just as a preventative measure. So I'm I have a bit of a charmed life. Another question.
I have a question.
Sure.
How does the average person determine what sources to examine as to what the real facts are?
Boy, that's a really, really good question, Tom. And let me think on just can I think on that for a moment and come back to you?
Yep.
And I'll answer somebody else's question while I'm thinking.
Yeah, I'll ask a question.
So somebody asked me an easy question. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know if it's easy or not.
Go ahead, Ann.
I do ask this question of myself. Given the information we have today with Google, when I was a kid, I would have eaten that alive. Why is it, do you suppose that young people you talk to today have no curiosity? They've got this Google in front of them that can answer a million questions, and nobody seems to be interested in anything. They don't dive in there and find out why is and what is and who is.
Well, and of course, that's really what I'm talking to you about today is, I mean, I led with bar bets only to foil Susan's plan to reveal what I was going to talk about. Curiosity is the thing that we really are in danger of losing, and that is going to be irreplaceable. To answer your question, Anne, and again, drawing back from history, we have always believed that if people had more information, that we'd all be better off. That's what we've always believed. It's not true. It was true. It was true forever until the mid 1970s, and it's not true anymore. And the way I say it, sort of cheekily, among friends is people are no longer ignorant. They're stupid. And what I mean by that is they're stupefied. They have an inability or a refusal to process all the information that's available to them. So we always thought if people had more information, we'd be safer. And now we're in a place where there's so much information that everyone feels like they're sipping from the fire hose. It's the second semester junior year, just before midterms, every day of people's lives. And so there's so much stress, there's so much anxiety, and it's never spoken of, that people would rather just check out. They'd rather put on some feel-good movie and not think for a little while. And we'd never contemplated what would happen if people had too much information. Our systems are not built for that.
Yeah, Don, one of the problems I've seen with all this stuff is that people seem to be only looking at information with people they agree with.
Right.
In other words, if you're Democrat, if you're Republican, if you're whatever, you look at only the things that you agree with and you ignore the rest, instead of having an open mind and just looking at everything. That's one thing. Secondly, I've got to tell you, when you were reading your piece, the one thought that came to my mind actually was a smell rather than a thought, was going back into the library when I was in college, doing research for a paper, and the smell of those card catalogs.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing like that in the world.
No. Right. So to the hard question of how do you parse the information that's available? I think I know a couple of tricks that you all can do on your own. It doesn't require thumbtacks or a candle. One is to Tim's point. Notice if they always agree with you. Notice if the source that you're reading always agrees with you. That's not going to be your go-to source. That's not going to be a primary source. That might be a secondary source for you. It might meet some emotional needs you have, but it's not going to meet your informational needs. If they always agree with you, that's too narrow a view because you have too narrow a view. We all do. Second thing is ask people that you trust where they get their information, and ideally do it in conversation. When somebody says, XYZ, newspapers are maybe hitting rock bottom and may have a brighter future ahead. What are you reading? How do you know what makes you think that's true? Third thing, understand that certitude is never the end. We're never certain about anything, and we should really we should stop pretending that we do, that we are certain of anything. Humility is as important as empathy moving forward. And then the last thing that I would suggest is talk to people that you adore about the things that you think are true, and really carefully watch their face and know where they are probably non-verbally, certainly non-verbally, maybe unconsciously disagreeing with you. And note that. Say, okay, this part of what I'm saying may not be as true as it seems to me. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Don, have you ever decided to redesign the paper itself? Because when you open up the paper, it's about 2 feet long, and when you read the bottom part, the top part fold over. It seemed to be a very poor paper quality, number one. And number two, I think handling. It's much easier if it's a little bit smaller, the paper, rather than to handle to anybody, really. I mean, I find it very, very clumsy the way you handle the paper now. I mean, this just might be a very simple thing, but I just that my thoughts are.
Well, you're talking to me like I have that I own that newspaper and I don't, and have anything to do with those decisions and I don't. But I can tell you why that decision is made the way it is, and it's because of one phone call that every publisher dreams of receiving every single day, and that is the phone rings and the person on the other side says, how much will it cost if I want to place an ad that will be a full page in your newspaper? And so if you'd made the newspaper smaller so that it was more manageable for you, he'd have to give a lower number to that person that wants to buy a full page ad. So that's the answer to why that is.
Well, how about the quality of the paper? It's very, 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 the thickness, very thin, and it's just don't seem to be the right quality of paper.
Takes 4 pages to wrap it.
Okay.
The computers,
Another question.
the computers on subways had it all figured out. Because if you watched them,
Can't hear you.
they would fold their paper back and forth. Yeah, I don't know why that's,
You're
I don't know why.
So David Brooks recently, David Brooks gave a lecture, or now on. Sounds like I'm echoing.
Everybody's
Okay. Is that maybe somebody has their, if everybody turns off their microphone. Can you put just me on now? Hello?
Hello.
Okay, is that, okay, now
I was trying to mute everybody to see if we could.
okay. And coming back to questions that are good for starting conversations. I listened to a lecture about a month ago by David Brooks, and these questions that he suggested come from his latest book, The Second Mountain. So this is what I want you to be thinking about, and these are the kinds of questions that I want you to ask people. Not, how come your newspaper is this dimension or the paper is this thickness? These are other questions of an entirely different sort. So see how these play for you. Ask somebody, how did you get your name? I told you the story about why we've been mispronouncing our name for almost a century. How did the dead show up in your life? What is the place you never left? What would you do if you weren't afraid? What are commitments that you've made that you no longer believe in? Who were you in high school and how has that changed? What crossroads are you at? So questions that prompt more questions are the ones that we need to learn to ask.
I think that's
John,
incredible. This is a book that I've been reading, and I think that it's been hard this year for us to have those conversations with each other.
Well, I'm a big believer in agency and not a big believer in victimhood. if it's getting harder to ask good questions, then that just means we have to work harder. And you're muted. It's okay. We just can't read your lips. So can someone unmute people now, and maybe the echo is gone?
Unmute. There you go. Can you hear me now?
Okay, Anne, go ahead.
I'd like it. I was wondering in our next Lions Gazette, if we could have a copy of those questions that we should ask other people, because I think they're very good questions and they're very thoughtful questions. And I'd like to try them out, but I can't remember them all.
Well, I hope that it's the general idea, and come up with. I think you can probably make up your own questions that.
That's true.
That will. One question I like to ask people is when they're clipping their which hand is dominant and which of your hands is dominant.
Oh, my right hand.
Okay, and when you clip your fingernails, do you clip your left hand first, or do you clip your right hand first?
Well, I do my left hand first.
Yeah. Okay. See, there's three kinds of people in the world. There are people that, will defer their gratification. They would have done the harder of those two. They would have clipped their right hand first. There are people that don't defer their gratification. And there are people that don't pay attention, that just don't know what the answer is.
Mm.
I think it's useful for me anyway to know. So
the only question I ever ask anybody all the time is, how did you pick the vocation you have?
The rotation?
The vocation, for example, if you're a dental hygienist, why did you become that?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only one I ever ask all the time.
James, I saw your hand. You're muted. There we are.
You and I lunched together about 5 years ago. You're a good friend of my daughter, Emily Jerome.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway, a couple of comments that come up for me in your discussion. Do most of you remember who Carl Sagan is?
Sure.
Yes.
Astronomer. He was asked years ago what the most important thing we should be teaching kids in school is. And everybody, of course, thought he was going to say science or some particular subject. He said, we need to give them a baloney detector.
Huh.
And I tried to do that in my teaching, and that kind of goes to the question that a couple of people asked here. How do you sift through all this huge amount of information we have and figure out what's true and what's not, what's good and what's not? It's much, much harder. It's not easier. It's much, much harder.
Absolutely.
To find good information.
No, 100%. I agree 100%.
And then the second thing I was going to mention here is, years ago, I used to teach a science fiction story called The Sack, I think her name was, and they accidentally find a being on an asteroid who's absolutely infallible. And they work out a system where you pay big money to ask him questions. And people are asking, how can I get rich? How can I be reelected? How can I marry this woman? And finally, one ordinary guy says, I just have one question for you. What questions should we ask?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then he answers it with some really profound things. And it kind of reminded me of what your comment was. What's a good question? And
and that's very similar to Douglas Adams. Finding the answer to the universe is 42. Now we don't know what the question is. And and then when we finally find the question, it's, what is 2 + 2? And the person says, I always knew there was something fundamentally wrong with the universe.
So you supplied us with some good questions to ask.
Yes, and thank you so much, Don, for your knowledge and for your leadership and for your articles. We love them, and I always look forward to turning to the editorial page and reading your articles. So we are at time, so we'll adjourn the meeting. But for those of you who do want to have a recap of this, please know that I I hope that's okay. I recorded the presentation. And so we can go back and look at it on YouTube. And I have a 13-year-old grandson who's very good at doing the YouTubes. And he is one of those children who does not always agree with you and does think that he knows everything. Lion Tim?
Yeah, I just have one quick question. Does anybody know how Lion Sid is doing right now? Has anybody been in contact with him recently?
Lion Carroll is the last one who I know has been in touch.
He stopped by about a week ago, I guess it is, and he's dealing with a lot of things, but he's gonna make it.
We received an email, and in the email, he said he was very thankful to all of the Lions who had sent sympathy cards and had communicated with him.
So keeping the notes going and helping him feel included is important, I think, at this time. The worst thing you can say is nothing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.
I have to go look at the brighter side.
Please, I've already been outbid.
Oh, shoot.
Seriously.
All right.
Yes, be sure you visit the website.
Okay, thank you so much, Lion Terry,
Awesome.
for all your work.
Yep.
Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you on the 5th, if not sooner.
All right.
Here.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, Terry left. Okay. Bye.
Bye.